Hey guys, it's Turok. Take two, Turok. I just recorded this video about 20 minutes ago, and I was playing through it to edit out my little coughs and such, and like that. And I discovered most of my recording of the audio just didn't work for whatever reason. I don't know. So I'm going to do this again. Today is chapter. I'm reviewing One Piece chapter 1116. We are continuing the um, Vegapunk's broadcast. He's successfully getting a lot of his broadcast out. The last two full chapters started in successfully talking a bit about Joy Boy and the ancient war and what was happening with wait, where is that? With the war that started a war from wait, why is this doing that? God damn it! Come on. A war between the alliance of the other nations, 20 nations that became the world government, as well as um, the how the world is actually sinking into the ocean is how I describe it. But really, like waters are rising up, and all these other countries and places that existed 900 years ago are gone, including the ancient kingdom itself and perhaps other nations. So this is also something I didn't think about when I first recorded this. Is that this is interesting because the this means that the Wano was quite the foreshadowing on Oda's part, in that it was a land that was put up walls, as I talked about in the last video. Uh, I'm checking the audio. I'm really worried that this won't record like it did last time. It happened about 10 minutes in on the other video. So these walls were erected in Wano to keep out, I suppose, the flooding. Unfortunately, in the internal part also flooded, and everyone just kept going up. So this apparently is what happened to all these other places across the world hundreds of years ago. And actually, now that I think about it, it's funny that none of that knowledge, stories about that, was ever passed down to any of these nations that still exist in the world, their descendants. None of them talk about this. No one knows about this other than the what Vegapunks found out, and that's because of the poneglyphs, which are important in here a little bit too, because of Lily Nefertiri, which she must have known. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe the emu made sure that other people wouldn't talk about it. Maybe he made that taboo, and just people forgot that even it got so far that other people just like didn't know about it. After many generations, other people just didn't know about it, and no one knew about it because the first few generations might be like, shh, shh, don't talk about it, other than cut our heads off type of thing. It seems to me. Um, so he went on about that, and in the end of the last chapter, he started talking about how the ancient weapons are still around, and they were the cause of this problem, of this what happened. And while that was happening, we kept going around the world, seeing other people's actions, and we're still gonna see some of that today. And secondly, uh, we saw briefly some of the Straw Hats getting organizing together and getting ready to go out, but we see very little of that today. We don't see Luffy or much of anybody. I think this one really focuses a lot on Vegapunk and the other reactions. And so let's get into it. There's a cover story that has to do with Yamato. She's traveling around still. I still don't know what's going on with this, and I'll go over it in another video, I guess, because it looks cute. It's nice to see the southern. It's kind of like Oda throwing us off from all this turmoil and stress of the Straw Hats escaping by showing us one of our allies going around having a good time, and Wano recovering from Kaido's tyranny. Um, but So we start with seeing other reactions to Vegapunk's statement about the world government, the ancient weapons still existing, and the war essentially still going on. And we see, I believe it's this Water 7, and it's like, wait, there are still weapons out there that can just destroy the whole world. And I think that something I was thinking about with that is that mean that I like that response because it's almost like these people. It's kind of like so it's kind of like the response. I was watching or listening to a podcast a few years ago about how when America first produced nuclear weapons and we were trying to figure out how to deal with them, and it was like, how do we make sure we don't destroy ourselves type theme throughout that about how we were when we had the weapons and the USSR got them early on. And I think the theme here too with these people's reactions is the same. We shouldn't allow such weapons that could knock us back to the Stone Age as we use here. They shouldn't exist. I think that's the reaction here coming from some of these citizens watching the Vegapunk's broadcast. I like that theme, and I agree. Having such weapons can be extremely dangerous. Look how look how bad we were when we just had spears and arrows back in the day. If you had a formidable army like Alexander the Great, he went into Persia, the largest empire, the first true like large land empire at that time, and crushed everyone. He was like an existential threat in his own, with like 40,000 well armed and well trained men. And now we have, World War One was a good example of stuff where people were worried about that too. There was an excellent podcast by that same guy I was listening to, Dan Carlin. Anyways, I can feel here that people are probably getting afraid of this like idea of that even though we have all these powerful warships already in the One Piece world, having something that can just cause the water levels to increase so much are extremely scary. Because it would just if water levels kept rising here, obviously there's nowhere to go, and their whole ways of life would be destroyed. And then it goes on we get ongoing reactions saying like, how can a war from centuries ago be still going on? And no one back then would even be alive. And why would this be going on in total secrecy? So we can answer these ourselves. The obvious one from us as a reader's point is that we know at least one person is still alive, Emu, who's still going with this because he wants to make sure his control is ironclad. And he's, as we saw in chapter 1085, he's upset that Nefertiti Lily, as he called it, like a fatal mistake or such, that the poneglyphs she let the poneglyphs get spread out to the world, and he kind of made it out like those are seeds that propagated the continued this continued war, as Vegapunk calls it. So he's still there, but they don't know that. But I can answer this person's question about how can a war still be ongoing. The other answer is that obviously that means that the other side that lost still has remnants of themselves existing, and thusly the side that won though has handed down the responsibility to their future generations to, hey, we got to take these guys out, which is likely the D clan. As we know from Son Goku saying that they're the enemies of gods, the gods, or something like that. He said, meaning by the celestial dragons, whose forefathers were the 20 or 19 without Lily, uh, uh, um, kings and queens or whatever that won the war against the ancient kingdom. uh, and as this is happening, we actually see Emu wandering around in his well, not wandering. He's in his flower room, and this is a very interesting point here. He's walking around. He's walking toward one end of it, and he stops at a wall, and he has a giant portrait of Lily. It looks a lot like Vivi. It's got to be Lily. It looks like something that's been there, I'm assuming. And he looks at it, and we briefly get a reaction from him because he sounds like he's still listening to the rebroadcast himself, and he's like Vegapunk, and he's just got this big bold thing with his name, with Vegapunk's name, with lots of exclamation points. So it's very obvious, even though with the eye too, that he must be very angry. And I like this too because if you're watching the anime, we should probably get a voice actor, a voice to the person for Vegapunk in about 10 to 15 episodes from now. We're getting to a point where we're going to see where I talked about chapter 1085 when we get that episode because we're getting the episodes are catching up to like 1075, 1076. It could be less than, it could be like 10 episodes at the least. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see what voice they choose, because the silhouette obviously does not show any give us any hint really for sure if it's a man or a woman or something else in between, whatnot. So that'll be cool to see. So we switched from seeing the reactions of the people to Eam. We switched to Alabasta, and Vegapunk goes on. So Vegapunk here starts going on. So this part of the story is going to go more into stuff that's going to help us piece together what happened in the last few weeks of the. It's going to be something like that. It's in the current time of Egghead. This part here. So Vegapunk was going back before and talking about how the world flooded, about a war, and about Joy Boy. He'll go a little more into that stuff, but the part here that becomes more interesting is now he switches over and he's going to start talking about something that happened that led up to the Lucia incident, essentially. Make sure this is in. Okay. So, what he goes on to say is, first, as he's doing this, I'll explain this whole panel. This whole next page is a bunch of panels of our friends at Alabasta, and I don't remember their names, but we got Pell and the other guard that's always with him, the main ones that guarded Cobra and Vivi, and we see the other guy with the lustrous hair who went undercover with her back at Whiskey Peak, and he's that one is he's crying over Vivi's picture. He's looking at it, and the little her pet bird is there as well, and they're crying together over the fact that she's still missing. And we know now where she is, that she's safe, but she has no way to contact them, and she probably wouldn't, because the world government might be trying to tap everything to find her, because she escaped the grasp of because they had Cypher Pole Zero, the other ones that were there. I can't think of any of the names right now. They had captured her, and Wapol unintentionally helped her escape. And the other two, Pell and the other guy, they're sitting together with other guards, and they're sitting in like a kind of church area, and it's kind of it feels like it's supposed to be like that. There's a casket there with Cobra's picture above it, so this must be him. They're mourning him. Maybe they're having like a public thing where some people could come in even. But this is also because it's Alabasta. This is not like a Christian-looking church. Oda has it designed with some hieroglyphic-looking images, like those is that Horus? Horus and Anubis, I think. The dog god, the one from the dead, and then the Horus, who's like the who's her his the son of Isis, right? And Osiris, I think. I know only a little bit of that stuff, mostly from reading other books, modern takes on that stuff. So they're sitting together and they're listening to that, and then, but as this is going on, Vegapunk's message continues over, and he starts saying, "I have to apologize to everyone here because there's something else. I must confess that it's my fault." Now he's going on to, so he goes on to talk about, my goal was to create a stuff that could help people and make the world a better place. Wait a minute a sec. And, sorry, just wanted to bring up this panel here, the big panel. Actually, I want to stop here because there's a second. I had a little tangent here. I like what's going on here. I was thinking the other day, earlier, as I read this, like this was interesting to think about what century the One Piece world is in. And I originally thought with like all the what most people use sailing around the seas, and the Marines being outfitted with musket weapons, that the world felt like it was in the late 18th century, where we had muskets inside, or even early 18th century, 19th century, excuse me. And it's clear now with Vegapunk coming up, we're kind of entering a point with Vegapunk, and also there was a point where the Mr. Five back at I think Little Garden had the first revolver shown, and he was talking about how it was a new thing being manufactured, and it wasn't that many of them. So Vegapunk here is helping the world enter from a phase of like the 1800s into like the 20th century. Because even like Morgans was talking about, like, I think it was in the last episode, I think showed that, and it was like 1075 or so in the manga, where like, oh, the world's gonna be upset over what's happening here because Vegapunk's a hero to the world for bringing light to everything. So he starts going on here about this wondrous thing he made. He goes and tells the world about the mother flame. Like, I was trying to make something to help the world, and I made the mother flame, and its power will have so many practical uses. And I'm certain that one day with something like this, we can make the world a place of abundance where no one has to starve or need for have want of anything. I mean, now he goes over and saying, however, this breakthrough made causes its own conundrum. And then we see briefly the mother flame here, but it's I don't think we see Saturn there. We see Saturn briefly in this thing, but not there. I don't know if he's there. It's kind of just showing us to it, so we're reminded of what it is. We get a small a close up of it as well. But Vegapunk goes on to point out, however, a problem came when someone stole a piece of the mother flame, and I must take full responsibility for what happened afterward. And so it stops a minute though. This stops briefly, and we're going to come back to it. We start switching over to the to first some Marines who are trying to logistically figure out how to help those Cypherpol agents that fell from the labo phase that was caused by um Ethan cutting using Kitetsu to cut the separate the labo phase from the machine that was creating the clouds to hold it up. And somehow it still seems to be levitating there. We still don't understand that part. The main problems come is that the cloud machine is disconnected, as we'll get to it in a second. While the Marines are trying to figure that out, we switch to a conversation between Stussy and uh, Edison, and she's heard that she's up still in the lab, so she can't see what's happening, and she contacts Edison like, "Oh, what was that weird tremor that just happened?" And he's down below, so he can figure out, see more what's happening, and he looks like he's stepping out actually of that. He's in that machine there, producing the clouds, and he looks out and he sees the agents, and we do see one of the Seraphim, S Snake, and he's like, "Yeah, it spooked me too. It looks like the whole bottom of the lava face just came crumbling down with all the Cypherpol agents." Uh, um, and she's like, "Wait, crumbling down? How did that happen?" He's like, "Oh, must be another one of those other elders must have done something." But then he goes on to point out, like, there's a bigger problem here. Now that that's separated from each other like that, I can't use the machine to help generate more clouds for the Straw Hat crew. So it doesn't state like that what he did before has not been reversed or nullified. We saw in the last chapter that some of the stuff was being produced out there, and we saw Nami and the others seeing it like, oh, this must be what Edison is doing. Hopefully that's still there and it can help them. They can maybe use the Cootie burst to jump over some of those other ships to get away from the Buster call. But he was trying to produce quite a bit apparently to help them, but now that's been stopped. And it wasn't something I think Ethan intended, right? He cut that because he was trying to. They're still looking for the snail to see if it's up there. And spoilers, it's not. We're gonna find out where it is here. But he did that so that the Cypherpol agents net would be down lower. So by using their observation hockey with Saturn and Mars up there, they can uh use their observation hockey to try and detect whatever life forms are left up there. So there's going to be the Straw Hat crew over there, and York is going to still be in the light. But the others, those other ones will be out of the way, and there's like dozens of them that will. This will narrow down their search. Um, uh, yeah, Edison continues like, oh, there must be. If there's another elder up there, it's going to get more dangerous. You should get out of there now, Stussy. Um, So Stussy here is coming into a point where she's worried about leaving the Vegapunks behind because she's dedicated her life to helping them, especially Stella. And likewise, we saw how she's in this conundrum of like she doesn't think she's a real person, so she's kind of like never had her. She's kind of created a wall around herself where she thought she had no free will to, and wanted to just help him. but now she knows if she leaves, she won't know what to do with herself. And Edison's going to address that in a minute. But she starts by first asking Edison one more thing, like, "Hey, Edison, do you think it's okay if I let Kaku go free? He's still locked in there in a bubble." And Kaku's surprised by this too. And Stussy goes on to point out, like, I don't want him to suffer for what's going on here. He's not part of this anymore. And I won't let him go after the Straw Hats, so you don't have to worry about that. But I know he will anyways. I agree with that. I think there's a point here now where uh, Kaku is probably going to not bother with this anymore. He's probably going to get the hell out of Dodge. He's not like Lucci. Actually, someone pointed out, when did I hear that? Oh, it was one of Tekking's reviews. I forgot about this, but apparently Kaku really wanted to be a carpenter when he was young, before he was recruited into uh, um, Cypher Pole. And so when he got the really undercover and worked with the Gali Log Company at Water 7, this was basically him living his dream. And so now he had to go back to do his job and try and stop the Straw Hats. And I wonder if he won't try to go back there and ask forgiveness and say, "Hey, can I come work for you after this?" Part of me thinks they will let him back, because he's more genuine in his love for what he was doing there. The others were all just doing it as a job to work there. We had Bluno, what's her name? And we had Khalifa. I forget. And they were all just, really into the job. But he definitely was one who cared for that occupation, since it was something he wanted before he came into the occupation he's in now. So anyways, Edison goes on, "Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, I'll let you do that." And in a way, I think Edison's just doing, like, Edison wouldn't try to stop her anyways, but he knows that she's looking for permission because she doesn't know how to think for herself that well at this time. And he says, "I'm sorry for putting you through this too, because I didn't know that you thought of Kaku as a friend." Maybe he means Lucci too. And he says, "Forgive me for making you turn on them." And it's funny, he says it like he's Stella. It was Stella that actually asked her to do that, but he's still a Vegapunk. So he says he takes he asks for forgiveness too, as in like a representative. Uh, and he goes on to compliment her by pointing out, despite you being torn by your loyalty to Vegapunk and then your loyalty to this job, uh, you still you rescued us, but your conflict in that situation proves that you are a person. So don't ever doubt that of yourself. And this causes Stussy to cry a little more, because she's like trying to still come to grips with that conflict of herself, thinking she's not a self-sufficient or able to person who can have her own goals and dreams in life. Um, and Edison ends this conversation by pointing out, after this, you gotta do as you please and try to find a way to live and have your own hopes and dreams. Basically, like, he's trying to, really push her to stop having this inner uh, punishment to herself. And it's a very sweet moment there, actually. And Stussy's like, "Yes, I'll do that." Yes. Um, so now we get back to the story. Vegapunk has, where did that end up? So we'll go back a sec. Uh, so he talks. So now Vegapunk lays out a backstory about of the Mother Flame being stolen. And he goes on to say, 2 weeks after it was stolen, I observed something happening above the kingdom of Lucia. And this catches everyone's gut. This is a big point here. Everyone starts catching up, like, Lucia. What happened to Lucia? We haven't heard anything. So this never got in the news, obviously. Morgan's just covered it up. He didn't do any investigations. We first see the reactions of from the Kamubaka kingdom. We see some of the uh, other Revolutionary Army officers, and especially in this point, we see some of the lieutenants, and we see especially, what's her name again? Muka? I forget her name. She's the one of the main characters that from the Lucia who were able to escape, and this is really something that is poignant to her, because those were her people that got killed, her neighbors and friends and stuff. And And then he says later, I heard that the nation, I was able to receive a report showing that the nation had just vanished without a trace. Now, this bit was interesting too, because I was thinking, okay, he talked about earlier how even though he's affiliated with the government, he usually can't learn much, but he did figure this one out, or someone told him this. Maybe he had some other connections that told him. Uh, so he used that information. He said, before long, my equipment showed that there was earthquakes were happening all across the world. Uh, um, where does it go? So he goes on to say, even though this is more my pride than anything. I can't help but think that it must have been whatever caused that the Lucia to sink and the earthquake to happen must have been caused by can't be basically saying it can't be a coincidence that the mother flame a piece of it was stolen and then something like this happens 2 weeks later. And we get the reaction of someone here too. Uh, I don't know who this guy is. Anyway, so I don't know who that's supposed to be that he's showing up. I still gotta look that up. Uh, and he's as he's telling this, we see what's her name, Moda. She's like, why would someone do that to Lelucia? And I have to stop there. I hope that Salvo, she doesn't take it out on Salvo because obviously Salvo was there, or they thought, and he was leaving at the moment, so he didn't get caught up in it. He was able to rescue her and some other people, and it was his. It was just happened chance that he was there, and so Eam told the Gorosei to use that mother flame on that location. It could have been anywhere else. We could have had we could have Dressrosa maybe destroyed. I mean, it's got to be repaired now, anyways. But they could have utterly pummeled that, or I can't think. I'm trying to think of another inhabitable place around here they've been to. They haven't been to many islands there, have they? Really? That's a independent nation. We went Wano, Zo, Totland. I'm trying to think of someplace else that I think was Lucia in the New World. I don't think we know many independent nations there that aren't pirate affiliated, other than Dressrosa at this time. Anyway, so they could have been anywhere else essentially. Well, it could have been maybe they tried to do part of Alabasta or Water Seven. I'm thinking of other places on the Grand Line. Um, so we switch to someone another character I do recognize right away. King is what's his name? Elizabeth or so the second, the big guy with the who was one of the allies of the Straw Hats. He started out as a combat. He was a contestant in the Coliseum trying to get Ace's fruit, and he's a big guy and he likes to box and he could charge up that punch that was like a souped up hockey type punch, which actually I found I was thinking back was a very impressive thing because even Luffy with his like King Kong guns and stuff never hasn't learned anything quite like that. I think the closest thing we've seen to that so far was uh uh Garp's punch, his Galaxy Impact thing was very similar. So we see the King Elizabolo listening, and he's like, "Wait, Lelucia's gone. I want this. I want this. I want to find out if that's true." And he tells that guy, I don't know his name, but he's the one who was there. He was also there at Rosa, and he's like the strategist to King Elizabolo, and the king says to him, like, I want you guys to investigate this right away and find out if Lucia's still there. So maybe his island's near Lucia. Uh, and we have other people in the background of his court going on, like, Lucia's gone. We haven't heard anything about that. So obviously, again, nothing had been reported on this. And the other the mustache guy's like, yeah, right away, I'll check it out. And as that's happening, we get more Vegapont's voiceover saying, I have to accept that somehow, like my weapon, my invention that I made to help the world had been used to power one of the ancient weapons. And he's like, I don't understand what the motives could have been or who would be behind it exactly, but it all boils down to one thing. I'm now an accessory in this act that killed many people. And he gets down and does that bowing forgiveness of prostrate, maybe you call it that's like perhaps a Japanese or Asian custom. I don't quite know the whole origin behind it, but I know it's meaning he's asking for forgiveness, and he says that here as much. I can't. He goes, I can't never fully express how remorseful I'll be for this event, but I hope you guys will forgive me. I am truly sorry. Uh, but then he goes on to say, well, this also proves that my theory was true, that this disaster was man-made. And while that's happening, we switch over to Baltimore. I think that's called briefly, where he grew up, and people are there like, no, Vegapunk, don't blame yourself like that. You're taking this is clearly something out of your hands. Uh, and I'm glad they're doing that because they're right. This is too much. It's not his fault. He didn't. He trusted his his satellites, and we're gonna get to that in a minute. The satellites, and he now realized that he couldn't, and but he still feels a fault because he's just that kind of guy. Like if something he created is how in any way harms other people, even though he didn't directly do it, he's taking the guilt on himself, which I feel bad for people who take it as far as he is. Anyways, I understand and feel a little bit of that, but like it wasn't you that directly did it. You can't take all that blame. Anyway, so we switched to Kinemon and Momomosuke. I can't say it right today. And he's like, "What? Ancient weapons? Is that like Pluton?" And him and Kinemon are both like right on top of the thing. The Denden Mushi. Oh yeah, what's her name's there? Is that which one is it? Otama? She's there too, eating. And anyways, Kaname was like, "Shh, wait, my lord, let's finish. Let him finish." So Vegapunk now starts going over a little bit of this something about these ancient weapons. She's like, there were three of these great ancient weapons, and we see Crocodile for a brief moment listening to this, and he's like, "Wait, there are others." I think that's the kind of response they're trying to show erect from him is that he doesn't know about the others, perhaps, because we first learned about Pluton about 900 chapters ago because of him. Oh, maybe a little less than that. Because of him uh wanting to he learned about Pluton somehow, and I don't think we ever learned how he did that, but he then set out to find it, and his research led him to Alabasta, and then he recruited Robin. So we can tell he's intently listening to this. And then we switch to Shirahoshi as well listening to this. I'm trying to think now back at Fishhead if she understands. She understands she has the power to control the Sea Kings if she wishes, but does she? I don't know if she still fully understands that this is related to this. So this is interesting for her to see this. And so Vegapunk goes on to say there were these these three great weapons, and in my research, I found that Joy Boy had attempted to ensure that these would be passed down to the next generation of people. And then Vegapunk goes on like, why would he do that though? Wouldn't that cause more harm to the world? Hadn't we sunk enough of the world into the water? And he goes point out like, I don't understand the ambiguity. There's ambiguity in the poneglyphs that don't explain that, and that's part of why I can't figure out what side in that war that happened, if which side, neither side can clearly be branded as evil. And so Shirahoshi's listening to this and then in awe too, and yeah, it's cool to think. So that's something too, like Vegapunk's Joy Boy he's saying Joy Boy wanted to make sure the weapons were safeguarded. I'm guessing he means maybe that's a better way to put this translation. And that's thinking now that's probably what happened with Pluton. Joy Boy perhaps worked with the Wano citizens of the past to safeguard Pluton, probably when the war was looking bad for his side, and they succeeded with Pluton. But we now see that if this statement is true at face value, the government did get their hands on Uranus. And as for Poseidon, that Shirahoshi is the next one who's gained this, perhaps the first one since then. That's actually interesting. That's a nice little parallel with Luffy, I guess. I wonder if that's Oda's, purposely doing that, where there was a Shirahoshi had an ancestor who helped Joy Boy, because there was something about that with the poneglyph by him leaving an apology to her ancestor. And now she's the first one to probably gain that power since then, just like Luffy's the first to get waken the Gumu Gumu fruit. The way they said that Luffy may have had, someone else may have had the fruit, but didn't awaken it before him within the last 800 years. Uh, uh, and while that's happening, we switch to Sengoku and I think her name's Suru, and he's munching away at like his at some rice crackers. Like it's kind of like he's eating popcorn. Like, oh, this is getting really good. He's eating so fast. Suru's like, hey, calm down. You're gonna choke yourself. Choke on that stuff. And there's this message here. I think I understand this now that I'm recording this actually. And Vegapunk goes very dramatic, like, but the day of the answers will come. But just we should be warned that if this happens, if the weapons do come back out, we will have to all be weary of the world becoming sunk even worse. I think I'm interpreting this myself now. The translation is like everyone will fear the notion of a sunken world. I think Vegapunk is essentially getting at like these should not come back out of hiding wherever they are. These other ones, like it's bad enough we got someone's using one of them. We should never let Vegapunk. I think he's the better way to put that too is he's saying Joy Boy's plan to have other people gain these things later is probably a bad idea because they'll be misused, just as we're seeing now with Leloucia. But now we get to another interesting part here where he goes on to say, the Void Century itself is still extremely enigma to me, and what research I was able to do. But I know there are those out there who found out what happened in its entirety and who still know. And this catches everyone's attention. But before we get to that, we briefly see Akainu at the base, and he's looking pissed about as much as the Gorosei that this is happening, and he's like crushing either like a cigar or something I think in his hand and burning it up. And he's like, "Oh, he's gonna tell them everything. You really are, aren't you, Vegapunk?" And now Vegapunk reveals who knows that information. He's like, "Oh, I'm of course referring to members of the Pirate King's crew." And everyone really like drops their. They only show the Marines, a handful of Marines again, but they're just like, "Wait, what? A pirate crew? And the King of Pirates is the one who knew this?" And we show Crocus briefly at that revelation, and he's just like, oh boy. And then Laboon's just there in the background, like, wait, what? I can't tell what Laboon's supposed to be doing. They have him doing his typical like, ooh kind of position, but he might not be moaning at the moment. I don't know what they're trying to convey there. And clearly Crocus understands what Vegapunk's talking about. And now we get to another group of people. Some other reactions of citizens like, wait a minute, pirates would know this? How? Isn't that dangerous that they would know the secrets of the world? So now we get to the revelation, the bit with about who stole the Mother Flame. We get back to York. We haven't seen her in a little bit. Was she in the last chapter or the other? I know she was running around looking, and she goes, she's hearing that stuff. She's like, wait, how would Stella figure out it was me? She confesses aloud to her house aloud, and when we can read it now, we're seeing it as viewers that she stole the Mother Flame and gave it to the Gorosei. So this was probably part of the deal she did with them. She was like, I think incognito contacting them early on and saying like, hey, the Dr. Vegapunk is studying the Void Century, which I know is taboo. And they sent Cypher Pole to investigate, but he was very clever in hiding his research. But she kept contacting them, and now she made a deal with them, which I doubt they're going to hold up. But she was like saying, hey, if you help me, if you let me be a Celestial Dragon, I'll help you out in stopping him from researching this, because he's probably going to let the whole world know. And it's probably like an act of good faith. She took a piece of the Mother Flame and gave it to them. I don't know if I doubt she understood they had the other or Uranus. She probably just said, this was probably just part of the deal where she would have said like, hey, keep me alive. You can take out the others, because I know about the Void Century, but you can make me a Celestial Dragon, and on top of that, if you're gonna need one of us alive anyways to make sure the Mother Flame can operate. We're the only ones that know how to make this. You're never gonna have another scientist do this, which is something I kept thinking about. So I was clearly wrong too about thinking that Uranus was. I thought Uranus may have been something he made to use with the Mother Flame, and it was then they repurposed it to make it a weapon. But this chapter is Vegapunk's clearly saying, no, I didn't make that thing. I had this mother flame, and then someone was stolen. So now I can figure out. Also, to go back to that, I was trying to figure out how Vegapunk figured out what's going on. It's clear now Vegapunk has instruments that can like see earthquakes are coming, and he had some kind of radar, not radar. He doesn't have radar. It's too bad he doesn't, because he probably would have seen Uranus flying around at the time. He did mention, the way the description said is he saw something happening over there, like maybe he had like infrared type detectors or such. So he saw the incident happening and then heard about it. I got a report through a tip off through the government somehow that Lucia was gone. But so I kept asking it in the last couple of videos, how does Vegapunk know what happened over there? How did he figure it out? But so he clearly saw something on his instruments first, and he could figure out that it was Lucia. Heard it's gone, then figured out, okay, if something like destruction happened there, there'll probably be tsunamis and earthquakes and such. And he started waiting for that and found that proof to be true. So that answered that question, and also answered like, hey, uh, yeah, the Uranus exists, and it wasn't something Vegapunk made in this case. So York goes on. How would he know I stole the Vega? How did he figure this out that I stole the Mother Flame? I tried. I covered my tracks really well. I cut off my memory synchronization so that you wouldn't see it in the punk records. Also, I know for a fact you can't lie to save your life, and you're not an actor. And she thinks back to when he was surprised that it was her who was the traitor. And she's like, you were surprised, right? And she goes on like, "Oh, you got news about Lucia, and you took the readings." So she's very upset here that she Yorga's figuring out she's not as clever as she thought she was. She thought she could outsmart Stella, which is funny because she's created by him. She's a clone of him essentially, and you get this great panel where she's like, "Oh, I thought I could outsmart you." uh, also, back to that her part about thinking about him being genuinely surprised. Perhaps when the flame was stolen, Vegapunk must have figured out right away in his head. No one else here except one of myself or the satellites would be able to do that. So he probably became suspicious of one of them and just couldn't figure out which one did it. So also here, there's cameras everywhere, the Den cameras, but she must have been pretty clever with that part to hide evidence to show that so that no one would see that. Because Saturn was in the Mother Flame area, apparently destroying some of those like last chapter, but she must have made sure they were scooted off somewhere else so she could snatch a sample that she gave to the Gorosei. But she, so Vegapunk though, once that happened, she probably just the thing there she probably didn't anticipate, like, I forgot to look into it. Like, okay, Vegapunk can tell exactly how much of the mass or whatever of the thing is there, and she's like didn't account for that, so he figured out it's stolen, and that became the impetus of his suspicions. And she clearly that's what I'm seeing as her mistake here, essentially, and how she should have found a way to cover up that, and then Vegapunk would have probably not pieced this together right away or at all. And York goes on to point, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. How does this timeline add up? That means you understood the government's plans as well to come after you. Would have known the government would come after you and such. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done all this, right? You wouldn't have prepared for your eventual death, and by making this broadcast and hiding the snail to ensure it's gets out to the world. So she's trying to piece together how this feels like the other end of the mystery now. Now she's trying to figure out the villain, the culprit. Like in those mystery movies, they usually like the culprit reveals how they were hiding behind the scenes and doing these things. But now we're seeing how she can't figure out how him. So this is like a cat and mouse game. Vegapunk would be like the detective, and she's the thief or criminal, and he figured it out. But now we're trying to have her see her end of trying to piece together how he figured out all this, what happened, and how he eventually is outsmarting her here. But now this gives her the impetus of figuring out where it is. But, oh, actually, first before we go to that, we briefly see these poor saps from the cipher pole getting sucked in by Jupiter, the worm. He's sucking a bunch of those guys in, probably to help. I was trying to figure this out before, but he's probably by getting rid of them out of the way. He's trying to still they're trying to detect life forms and then narrow down where the broadcast snail is. But now York's going to figure it out. And this is my favorite part of the chapter, though. She contacts them and like, I know where it is. The Mars is the one who's like, are you certain? And the others are all listening. And did she give him like radio? She must have like, she's talking over her little radio thing. She must, maybe there's like speakers all around like a school has or something where they can hear. And she's like, wait, don't doubt me. I'm a Vegapunk. I can figure this out. And she said that before, so she's trying to have them instill some confidence in them that they still need her that way. But the reveal is, she says Vegapunk hid the snail inside the Iron Giant, or this says it's guarding it, and we see a great shot of it stomping around still in the around the jungle areas apparently, and with fire all over it. And it based on there's some comments from like I think it's Marines, so they're apparently still trying to fire upon it, even though it doesn't look like it's actually doing anything right now except walking around. But let's stop there a minute. I think what's going on here is clever on Vegapunk's part, because once he started figuring out that the government might come back and he'd have to make this broadcast, he did the smart thing. He, instead of leaving that broadcast snail somewhere in the labo phase where they would obviously start looking, as we have seen them are, and they are doing, even York jumped to that conclusion. He decided to go first, like the Fabio phrase, stratum, actually. And the best part is hiding it in the Iron Giant. This thing is so advanced, it's nearly indestructible as far as we can, even he thinks it's like, it's so advanced. And he maybe that's why he was actually there that day before, or he could have been there other days before too, because he visited it. He seemed to visit it a lot because he was studying it. But think about that. If he thought about the island being destroyed by a buster call, he'd think, well, the one thing that cannot be destroyed here, because I can't even scratch the surface of what it's made of and what powered it, is the Iron Giant. So outside of to me though, the only thing that could be detrimental to that poor thing's life though is like smoke inhalation, because we're seeing like fire everywhere. Hopefully he left it with some oxygen or something, in case like if like that Iron Giant. Now we know Iron Giant's activating, probably because of Luffy. Every time we saw activated, Luffy was in gear 5th. I wonder if that's where he's heading toward. Maybe he's walking toward Luffy. We don't see him in this chapter, but this now it brings up the part of like that. I guess the Gorosei are all going to probably abandon where they are and come there. Obviously, the three on top, Ethan, Mars, and Saturn will. I wonder if the other two will stop pursuing Luffy now and go this way. And that'll be quite a fight to see. If it comes a fight, maybe we'll slaughter on their end. Like I just can't wait to see what the Iron Giant's gonna do. And so all we see it though, we just see it like the last shot of it, just like its eyes lighting up, and I don't know if that's supposed to be like intimidating or not. It looks very intimidating. It's still like just stalking around. And so now we get to the last page, and we go back to Vegapunk, and he goes on about the pirate crew who the king of the pirates crew knew. And he's like, okay, and then this is interesting too, because I can't figure out how he would have learned it. I'm wondering if he talked to one of the other members that left after they left. And so we go and we're looking, and we see people watching from Sabaody. And Vegapunk goes on, starts by saying that I'm sure that the Vegapunk, the pirate crew, knew our entire history is lost. So why wouldn't they just tell? Why would they tell us? Wouldn't they tell us? And instead, they just faded away after the death of their captain. Why didn't they act and tell us the truth 22 years ago? Or 24 now? 24 years ago? I think it's 24 now with the time skip. So now as us do that, we get a shot first of Shaki's bar, and we go inside, and we see Shaki and Rayleigh, Shaki's pulling away. Some sap, sorry sap. I'm guessing Rayleigh punched him out. And Shaki doesn't make a big deal of it, but she's like, "Oh, Rayleigh, you shouldn't have done it to this poor guy. Haven't you had enough? I think you're getting wasted again." Oh, no, she says, "You rarely get this wasted." And Rayleigh's apparently doing this because he's listening to Vegapunk's message, and he goes on and is like, "Oh, I'm so old and washed up, just like Vegapunk here. This that geezer over there is saying too much though." So he starts going, "Vegapunk, don't be like this and take away take away the thunder from the youngsters. The thrill is theirs now, right, Roger?" And he just ends it there with that. And and then oh yeah, the Vegapunk leaves. I mean, Oda leaves a nice little pant thing at the end, reminding us like the little he does that little um not tagline. What would you call that? And it's that part. He goes back to when we saw Odin and the others with this one line. He's like, "Those who knew the truth just laughed." Going back to how we saw when Odin and Roger and the others went there and they discovered something. And so that's the end of the chapter, and we're gonna get a break next week. So there's quite a bit there to go over. Oh, actually, did I go over that? I think I forgot. The biggest thing that's really catch my attention here, though, is I don't think I said this in the beginning. Why does Eam-sama have a portrait of Lily in his room, in this flower room? The main thing that's come to my mind initially is not that he hates her, because he really does sound like he's angry with her. We saw that in the 30 chapters ago when he talked to Cobra, her descendant. I'm wondering if Eam and Lily weren't like lovers at the time, or even married, perhaps, at the very least lovers. And now he feels betrayed, that he has felt betrayed all this time because she turned her back on them, him, and as well as the cause, to wipe out the ancient kingdom by saving the poneglyphs and having them spread across the world. Because it's just very interesting that he would, because it's not like it's damaged or anything. It's not the same as like what he did when we first saw him in the flower room, and he had those cut up pictures of Shirahoshi. No, was it Vivi? Did he have Shirahoshi picture too? I think it was Vivi, Shirahoshi, Blackbeard, and Luffy. He had them all cut up there before he went out to talk to the Gorosei. Um, so that thing really catches my attention, and I like that Oda's doing that. You don't see too much of that stuff, I think, in shonen stuff where you have there's more teenage oriented stories where you get these darker backstories where like all these characters work together and then one betrayed another, and now they caused this rift that had countless repercussions to the present time. I've seen that stuff in stories like this, and I don't think shonen usually does that kind of stuff. Usually like the darker stories that are created by other manga where we have stuff similar to that. But not. I don't think Oda has done anything like that yet in this. So that's a very nice twist, if anywhere near true on that. And it's also interesting of note to me that it seems like that Akainu too knows quite a bit about what happened in the past, and he looks very pissed also that the Gorosei, not Gorosei, that Vegapunk's going to tell that all. And I'm wondering if that's just what reasons he could have for that outside of like mass panic to the people. Uh, so yeah, there's just a lot that happened in here. So yeah, we don't even see much of the Straw Hats in this one at all. I think. Do we even see? I don't think we see any of them here. Yeah, we don't really see. We don't even see Nami and the others up there. We show up briefly the level phase when Stussy and Edison are talking. We get none of them. Anything than that. There's a lot of implications here. Now everyone's going to know about the pirate crew and what they knew. So hopefully Vegapunk will go on more about that in the next one. But now we're going to have to, he might get, some of this is likely going to get cut off. I feel like Oda's still going to have a bit of Vegapunk's message somehow cut off in order to save that, whatever the big pieces or something. What else could even tell about though? I don't know, but I just feel like part of it's going to still get cut off. I hope the Iron Giant is tough as it looks, though. It'll be interesting to see it curb stomp some of those Gorosei. But I think that's all I got for today. So thanks for watching.